We've all heard of mindfulness, but have you actually tried it yourself? And does it work? I think a lot of people feel a bit skeptical about its supposedly magical powers, like helping us regulate overwhelming emotions, quiet our mental chatter, or feel more connected to ourselves and others. But really, how? How does it actually do that? Well, that's the question Daniel Siegel tries to answer in his book, The Mindful Brain, Reflection and Attunement in the Cultivation of Well-Being. He explores the possible brain mechanism behind mindfulness and why it might genuinely work. So, Siegel describes mindfulness as a kind of healthy relationship we build with ourselves. He calls it intrapersonal attunement, basically tuning in to our own inner world. Don't worry, I'll explain. In everyday life, we naturally attune to other people. When we talk with someone or just spend time together, we focus deeply on what they are feeling and what they mean. And that connection activates neural circuits that help both people feel felt by each other. Think about it. When we're with someone, our senses pick up their facial expressions, their tone of voice, and their body language. The mirror neuron system helps us tune in by internally mirroring what the other person is feeling. Then another region, the insula, turns those signals into actual sensations in our own body. That's why we can literally feel someone else's joy, stress, or calmness. This whole resonance circuitry, including mirror neurons, the insula, and other brain regions, is what allows us to feel empathy and emotionally sync with others. And here's Siegel's main argument. This attunement process stimulates growth in key parts of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for integrating different systems into a coordinated whole. And according to Siegel, integration is the common pathway behind many forms of psychological well-being. Take a child with a present attuned parent. When the parent listens carefully, responds with warmth, and really sees the child's internal experience, the child feels understood and safe. Over time, those moments of attuned communication help the child develop emotional regulation circuits in the brain, including those integrated fibers in the prefrontal cortex. The middle prefrontal cortex is like a hub. It brings together signals from the body, the brainstem, our emotional regions, and even the social world around us. It's the bridge between what we feel inside and what we see in others. If the hub works poorly, a child can get overwhelmed easily, react impulsively to stress, and struggle to manage their behavior. But when it's well developed, it builds resilience, supports emotional regulation, and helps them form attuned empathetic relationships. Now here's the cool part. When we practice mindfulness, whether it's mindful breathing or a body scan, we're basically becoming our own present parent. We intentionally pay warm, non-judgmental attention to our own sensations, feelings, and thoughts. That's intrapersonal attunement. And just like with an attuned caregiver, this process strengthens the middle prefrontal cortex. When integration is lacking, we go into autopilot. We react to life with old habits, rigid patterns, and we get thrown off by the mismatch between reality and our expectations easily. But as the prefrontal cortex becomes more integrated, we gain the space to pause, reflect, choose wiser responses, and regulate our inner world. And that's what makes resilience and well-being truly possible. Okay, now that we are on the same page about Siegel's work, what do you guys think of it? I'd say it's a nice try at explaining how mindfulness works scientifically. Maybe more people would be willing to give mindfulness a try after reading his book. But personally, I have a few doubts. Even though Siegel tries to be scientific, a lot of his main arguments feel more like educated guesses. First, the fuzzy concept of integration. Siegel describes it as linking different parts of a system into a harmonious whole. It surely does sound beautiful, but it's so vague that it's really hard to test scientifically. Another thing is that Siegel's theory relies heavily on the idea that if a brain region gets thicker after practicing mindfulness, it must prove his theory of attunement. But here's the thing, structural change doesn't automatically prove the mechanisms. Just because we see the prefrontal cortex grow after a few weeks of practice, it doesn't guarantee that it was attunement or any specific part of Siegel's theory that caused it. It could be a dozen of other factors involved in the practice. Since this book was published in 2007, there's been a lot of new research on mindfulness in neuroscience since then. Some findings do support Siegel that mindfulness seems to enhance functional connectivity between different brain regions, which fits with his idea of integration. However, these findings are more nuanced. When looking for physical changes using MRI, the most reliable change is in the insula, the brain region for sensing the body. Claims about structural growth in the prefrontal cortex, Siegel's main regulatory hub, are highly inconsistent. So the real brain mechanism behind mindfulness might be a bit different and more complicated than what Siegel suggested. Hey, what I mean here is that there are still a lot of myths around mindfulness. But don't get frustrated. The complexity exists because at its core, practicing mindfulness is about exploring the very concept of human consciousness. And consciousness, whether you call it our soul, our psyche, or any other name, is still one of the most controversial and mysterious puzzles in science, right? What Siegel did here was using an overly simplified model to explain mindfulness. It's certainly good marketing. It definitely encourages more people to try mindfulness apps and training, which is a huge business indeed. But it may be nowhere close to capturing the reality of what mindfulness or what consciousness truly is. So here's my final thought. For those of us who aren't neuroscientists, we don't really need brain scans to prove mindfulness works. Think about the logic here. Searching for brain regions that light up or get thicker because of mindfulness is an attempt that equates our mind with the brain. This is reductionist thinking. The idea that we can study consciousness by breaking it into pieces and study each piece individually. Yes, we might find some interesting localized patterns, but if our consciousness could only be studied as a whole, the reductionist approach, no matter how detailed the brain scan, will definitely fall short. But if we step back for a moment, we have to ask a bigger question. What if consciousness, our very soul or inner essence, is simply not something that can be reduced to biology? I'm not just trying to be mysterious here. The truth is that current science has no way to confirm or rule out that possibility. This uncertainty is exactly why you find the existence of mindfulness practice in so many ancient traditions, from Buddhism to Christianity and so many others. They may be pointing towards a dimension of experience that biology alone can't explain. If the real power of mindfulness lies in connecting us with this deeper, possibly spiritual layer of consciousness, then staring at brain scan would never give us the full answer. So whether you agree with my perspective or not, one thing is hard to deny. When it comes to mindfulness, our own experience matters the most. So why not give it a try? You could start by lying down and following a guided body scan or simply doing a short sitting meditation. It might feel strange, boring, funny, or even pointless at first, and that's completely okay. Mindfulness isn't about achieving anything or striving to feel a certain way. It's about paying attention to your inner experience just as it is. And who knows, over time, you might discover something even more profound than what this book describes. Thanks for listening. Next time you sit in silence, remember, you aren't just training your brain. You might be exploring a mystery that's been around since the beginning of time. Have a nice day. Bye bye.